Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 323. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News and the Falcon Valley Group, Daniel from 4Boxing News and the Insider. What's going on, lady and gent?
We apologize up front for any growling that may occur. I have two boxers, canine, not human, who are wrestling.
No problem. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, website, podcast discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get talked about. For folks who want to find more information in terms of the show, the website is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.com. Let me repeat that, P4pboxingreport.com. You check all over the page, or you will find links where to follow us all over social media. The Twitter page, the Facebook page, the YouTube page, where to find us on Tumblr, and where to find us on Instagram. If you want to email us, the email address is p4pboxing@p4pboxingreport. Also got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. Let donation be the next best nation. If you still got some STEMI money left over, or if you still got some tax refund money left over, please shoot some coin if you have some available, some free money to spend. I don't care if it's $1, $2, $5, $10. Doesn't matter to me. Please bless Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Shoot a little coin our way. It will help the overall production of the show, both live on air and behind the scenes. Last but certainly not least, I am an online coach for Beachbody. If you're looking to get your fitness game up or take your fitness game to the next level, check out my coaching page on Beachbody on the Pound for Pound Box Report website. And check out Beachbody On Demand. They got a 2-week free trial that runs throughout the year. What that means is for 2 weeks, you'll get free access to Beachbody On Demand. Please take advantage of that. Plenty of workouts from the classic P90X series, Insanity Asylum, the boxing-based fitness program, 10 rounds, 6 weeks of the work, bar blend, Pacquiao, morning meltdown, whatever are your fitness goals and interests, you'll find it on Beachbody On Demand. Let's get things going this evening by recapping some fights. Let's start in Florida, Kissimmee, Florida, to be exact. You got Emanuel Navarrete making defense of the WBO featherweight title. Had a highly successful run at 122 pounds, where he was also WBO champion. Moved up 2019, I believe it was. Won the vacant belts. He defended against Christopher Diaz, basically defended on the road against Diaz, who is a Floridian. Diaz, this is his second attempt at a world title. He lost to Masayuki Ito back in 2018, and Navarrete knocked Diaz down in round 4. He pretty much had control throughout, but that doesn't mean, and I'll go to you first, Gail, just because this was a situation where it was kind of one-sided for the most part, but that doesn't mean it wasn't. It was a complete domination, and that doesn't mean that the fight was not exciting. It was all the way through. Diaz, even though he was losing, he kept fighting hard, right? He was just, even though Navarrete is the guy moving up from 122, he was the bigger, stronger, taller, longer guy and the more powerful guy in the show throughout the bout. The 12th round was sensational, even though Diaz got stopped. That's what you want to see in boxing, and I advise those who haven't seen it to find it somewhere, be it on YouTube, be it on Daily Motion, or on the replay, I believe on ESPN Plus or the ESPN app, if you can find it there. In between, for the last round in the corner, his cornerman instructed him that you basically got to go for it. You can't leave nothing here. Got to leave it all in the ring, and that's what Diaz did. And the fact that he went for it, he pushed the pace. He tried to go for the knockout as he was instructed to do. It made it so fun. But Navarrete, he's a he throws these odd angles, and both men show tremendous heart and tremendous will. Just the power of Navarrete was just too much in the end. But overall, this was one of the more fun fights of 2021, Gail.
Super entertaining fight. Navarrete looked great in the win, but Christopher Diaz also raised his stock in the loss. It was that good a fight. Yeah, if it had gone to the cards, he would have lost, with a fairly good margin to Navarrete. But he was in it to the very end. In fact, even though he was really getting battered pretty hard in that 12th round, the referee stopped the fight with 15 seconds left. I'm almost always the one on the show defending the referee for stopping a fight against critics who say, oh, he stopped it too early. You know what? This is one of those times where I'm going to say, I wish the referee had let Diaz end the fight on his feet. And I think Navarrete would have honored that and let him, because it was already a 10-7 round. There was no point to beating him up anymore for those last few seconds if he realized how close they were to the end of the round. Diaz was being beat. Diaz, like most fighters, just have trouble with Navarrete, not just his power and his aggression, but he's awkward. He's got those, for a guy that powerful, he's got these skinny, long little arms, and he is lanky. That's the best way to describe his physique. This is not a guy who spends, hours and hours bulking up in the weight room. And man, he doesn't have to. He knows exactly how to leverage his length and his speed. But what it means is that he comes at you very awkwardly. He never stands right in front of you to deliver a punch. It's really hard for an opponent to get to him. Navarrete also has a great uppercut. He really does. And he used that very effectively. So, Diaz just would not give up. And he made Navarrete earn the victory. And he can absolutely keep his head held high. And it might have been because they were in front of a Puerto Rican partisan crowd in Kissimmee. I mean, a lot of people say it's about as close as you can get to being in Puerto Rico without being within the boundaries of the island. And they were right with Diaz all the way to the end. So it shows the importance of having the fans there. There were about 5,000 fans in the house. They sounded like 50,000. They were into it. And as much as we've said, well, it's nice to have the fans there, but you don't absolutely have to have them. It fired up all of the Puerto Rican fighters on the card, and proved that it does make a difference. Really, really good, entertaining main event, and some really great undercards. We'll, of course, talk about the co-main, but I'll tell you what, there was also on the undercard, absolutely, without a doubt, the best 8-round fight of the year, and maybe one of the best 8-round fights you will ever see, between Jermaine Ortiz of Massachusetts and the older Adorno brother, Joseph Adorno. It was a crazy good fight, and it ended up being a draw.
And it's his awkwardness, Daniel, is Navarrete's awkwardness and his unorthodox punches with power in both hands that makes him so dangerous. And that uppercut, as Gail alluded to, that is some kind of punch, one of the more lethal punches in the sport, regardless of division. I mean, how he, I hear some music, I hear some basketball play in the background. I'm sorry, that may be on my end. That may be on my end. My apologies. Let me cut this down. Okay, I got it. But it's that uppercut, as I was mentioning. How did he in that knockdown in round 4? How did he? He faked the right hand to the body, and then he came up with the left hand uppercut that Diaz didn't anticipate. Obviously didn't see, but it had devastating effect. It's that kind of weird, for lack of a better word, combinations that makes him some kind of a problem for these fighters to deal with. Your breakdown of this fight.
It was a fight with pretty much of thirds to me. It was like the first third of the fight. It looked like a little bit like Navarrete was still trying to get himself used to the weight, even though he had a lot of good success. And that was one of the main concerns, like moving up to a new weight class, getting used to the power, the resistance, and trying to get back to your group. By the middle rounds, he started to do his normal punch output that he did at 122. And that's when you saw the feints. That's when you saw the uppercuts. That's when you saw the body shots. That's when you pretty much saw any chance that Diaz had went out the window. And then the last, obviously, third of the fight, it was just pretty much just a war of attrition for Diaz. And the difficult part to me was the fact that it wasn't a situation where the ref blatantly stopped the fight. In the situation, Diaz's corner stopped the fight. Now, would it be a situation where a referee would have just ignored the corner stopping the fight? Considering how long it has to be, probably you could say that. But then if something does happen and Navarrete does land a pretty 30 shot, because Diaz at that point was gone. Like his legs were done. If it got to a point where if he lands, it goes into it, then you might question the decisions. And that's the little gray area, unfortunately, that we have to deal with when it comes into it. But otherwise, it was a very decent fight because it allowed Navarrete to get into his groove now at featherweight. Something that was very worrisome when you saw his first fight at featherweight, where it didn't look like the weight really suited him. But now, started to get better. It's not a situation where like the additional 4 pounds are causing strain in his body, because like Gail mentioned, like for a guy as tall as he is, as powerful as he is skinny. And it'll prove hopefully better throughout. Now, you can make the case that, like I said, Navarrete is ready for whoever needs to face him, like where it's unification in the division, or just to try to get himself for the 2022 Gary Russell sweepstakes.
Speaking of Gary Russell, let's talk future here. Um, I failed to mention this during the intro, but I am a writer, senior writer for Three Kings Boxing. Shout out to the folks at Three Kings Boxing, the head man, the HNIC, if you will, 2K, head of media relations, Bo, who you heard on the show last week, head writer, Bakari, fellow senior writer, Big Cool, editor Red. Ironic that you mentioned Gary Russell, because we've been writing over at Three Kings Boxing about what could be up next for Navarrete, future opponents, if you will. One of the names that were mentioned was the aforementioned Russell. Bakar wrote an article about pitting Navarrete in the ring against Gary Russell, the WBC champion, 26 pounds, Shakur Stevenson on Twitter the night of the fight said he would love to fight Navarrete. Should Navarrete move up to 130 pounds? Starting back with you, Gail, if you were his handlers, what direction would you put him in? I personally would like to have him some more fights at 126 pounds before he goes for the big guys, and either the big fights at either 126 to 130, kind of establish himself even more. If you were managing him, what direction would you take him? How would you guide him, in other words?
You know, how ambitious is Navarrete? He likes to stay busy, which is absolutely to be applauded. He's one of the busiest fighters in the business. I really think he doesn't have a whole lot of opponents to worry about, except for his polar opposite as far as his approach to the ring goes, who's very happy with his single annual appearance, Mr. Gary Russell Jr. You know, here's Navarrete, who, if he could fight 5 or 6 times a year, even at this level, he would. And he usually gets in at least 4 fights a year, once a quarter. That kid stays busy. You know, with Russell Jr., who's just an absolute enigma, who could fight and have so much acclaim and so many fans, and he just won't get his ass in the ring more than once a year. Everyone else, I'd say, make the fights you can. Navarrete wants to stay busy frequently, as long as he's got an opponent willing to engage. They're going to be entertaining, and he's smart to keep his name in front of the public. That is what is keeping him in the main events as a smaller weight division fighter.
Same question applies to you, Daniel.
Yeah, there's not much you can say in that factor. Like he has, when Navarrete is just a question of you want to keep you active. If unification is not the way, you can always fight. I think mandatories or people down the WBO ladder, because eventually you're going to get into a situation where either go back down, which probably wouldn't advise at this point of his career, or move up and then you run into that buzzsaw that it's either going to be Jamel Herring, Oscar Valdez, or Shakur Stevenson. So that's probably the avenue he'll probably get into probably by the end of the year, just to, if there are no discernible actual matches coming up at featherweight where he goes into, well, because at the end of the day, with Navarrete, it's about keeping him active. It's about putting him in the screen, and he's the type of guy that you can tell that he just wants to get in the ring, and as long as he makes sure that everything is kosher as far as a decent opponent.
Can an argument be made that he's the best featherweight in the world?
Absolutely, you can make the argument. Now, there are people who are going to disagree, and there will be people who say Gary Russell Jr. is a better fighter.
And I asked that because after the fight, excuse me for interrupting, I asked that because after the fight, Tim Bradley, who was doing ringside a commentary, said that he believes that no one at 126 pounds can beat him.
Yeah, because Top Rank's writing the check, and yeah, of course he would say that. And he's not completely out of line, but just based on the eye test, because they haven't faced each other and don't have that many opponents in common. I'd have to check on this. Gary Russell Jr. is immensely talented. That's why it's just so damn frustrating that he is so inactive. I think that's the only guy that could challenge him. Without them getting in the ring together, it's really a toss-up. It depends on the level of their opposition as they both move forward on parallel tracks until their paths cross. Right now, I am hesitating because Russell Jr. is just so damn skilled. But Navarrete, I give him the nod because he stays active, and ring rust is a thing, even for Russell.
You can make the case.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can make the case, Mike, that he is, considering if you're looking at the champions, there's really not a lot of pickers in there. It's either Russell or Santa Cruz. And we know Santa Cruz, we saw what he did in this last outing. Granted, it was 2 weight divisions up. But that's what you're going when it comes to what you're facing at a featherweight. So, yeah, right now, based on this, yeah, he can make the case with the best featherweight in the world, with the only exception being Russell Jr. And unless they can get him out of, to be blunt, this hotep mode that he's on right now, where it's only seems like the only time he wants to fight is during Black History Month. He has to make the fight because at a certain point, the law of diminishing returns, whether it comes to ability, whether it comes to your value, and also just because of the matter of fact that boxing is a young man's sport. The law of diminishing returns is going to catch up to Gary Russell Jr. at some point. And if not now, when you have a fresh new opponent and the only other possible opponent, he's probably not going to fight for a while. Why not do this? Why not challenge yourself?
So yeah, and and recap a very, very good fight. Um, One-sided fight, but very entertaining battle from beginning to end. And Navarrete, uh, in his last couple of fights, I had some doubts raised about him. He reaffirmed um, and answered some of my questions in this fight, and he's on the come up for sure. When it comes to the smaller weight fighters, let's just say south of 135, you have to mention him as up there. And it'll be interesting where Top Rank decides to take him. Will they go for unification? Since Stevenson is talking at 130, will they try to eventually put him up there at 130 because he has the frame to do it? It's going to be fun watching this kid for the next few years because he's getting this fight showed me he's getting better and better with each fight, and he's going to be a problem for a good while to come. Let's move on to the undercard, which was the chief fight on the undercard. Let me put it that way. Edgar Berlanga, who's getting a lot of hype lately, Daniel, for his power and for some of his comments out of the ring. I'll just say right now, before we get to his fight against Nicholson, I think a lot of people, myself included, believe he may be guilty of trying to get the big head, starting to get the big head a little bit, but he backs it up by putting guys on the floor, even though the opposition is questionable, to say the least. Well, Berlanga fought Damon Nicholson, right? And he didn't get a knockout. He did get a first round knockout. In fact, he, with the distance, scored 1, 2, 3, 4 knockdowns in the process, dominated throughout. I felt that Nicholson was going to take him some rounds. My thought proved to be accurate. He barely survived, but he did survive into the final bell, showed heart all the way through. The fact that Berlanga with the distance, the fact that Nicholson, even though he was, getting beaten and beat up, he forced Berlanga to work. He did land some shots on Berlanga. In the end, the fact that with the distance and given what he went through during the fight, will this serve him? Is this a positive for him in the end?
Yes. And I actually put it on Twitter that to me, he was probably the biggest winner of the night, even more than Navarrete, because he got what he actually needed. As much as I know, people love the first round knockout. He gets the highlight reels, he gets to the TikToks, YouTube, and all that. He needs some rounds in because he's already ranked in a couple of sanctioning bodies. And if you don't get some more rounds in against decent opponents, you don't know then what you have. You don't know what you need to work on, which in the case of Berlanga, you have to work on head movement. You have to work on body movement. You may have to work on getting good stamina when the mid rounds going, because at a certain point between the sixth and the seventh round, he looked gassed. Nicholson looked too because he was taking more punishment, but Berlanga looked gassed. And I know people were hyping him up to fight everybody, but right now that he's nowhere near ready. He's nowhere near ready to be considered top 10, let alone top 20. Like, if you try to put him up against people that are contenders right now, the division, like, for example, Benavidez Etherson, without a second thought. Caleb Plant schools him right now, as it is. So this is a good learning lesson when it comes to Berlanga. We know he has a good trainer, Rozier. We know they're going to work on what they need to work on. The head movement is going to be the best thing because, like I said, I mentioned like a match with Benavidez. Benavidez will hunt your head and he will throw uppercuts. If you don't move your head, that's a prime target for somebody like him. So this benefits Berlanga in many ways. It also gives him a little bit more of like a grinded out warrior type of vibe where you can tell like the way when he stood up in the corner at the end of the fight, how much blood was still already in his mouth. So you can say I'm grinding it out. I'm not just this KO machine. I can grind it out, which is what you need to do, particularly yourself when you're marketing yourself in, unfortunately, the very wide open space of just trying to be the next great Puerto Rican boxer. And he's certainly in contention to get that position.
Definition of a learning experience, Gail?
Absolutely. Those were extremely valuable minutes in the ring. In fact, that one fight Saturday night doubled the number of minutes Berlanga has been in the ring in his entire career, because he's had 16 fights, 16 first-round knockouts. I think the minutes total in the ring from those 16 fights was something like 25, 26 minutes. Well, he just notched another 24 across the 8 rounds of this fight. Best possible thing that could happen to him. He's 23 years old. He is going to come across opponents who are serious threats. I just mentioned a few. And he needs to be prepared. He needs to have a lot of the questions answered that he got the answers on Saturday night. You know, what kind of chin does he have? Can he take a punch? What happens if he gets rattled? What happens if his opponent is just, one of those guys that just is immovable? You're winning every round, but you can't get him out. Do you get frustrated? Do you make mistakes because you're anxious? He showed maturity. He showed patience. He kept going after it. All the right answers were coming. And better to have these things happen now at 23 than to have him get up against a big test without any of the answers he needed. And he's going to learn a lot. He's learned what, as Daniel said, he now knows what he needs to work on to better his game and what tools he needs to add to his arsenal besides power punching. Power punching's great. It's exciting. It makes a name. It does not win you fights alone. I also really like the fact that this hype and pressure is now off him. He's 23 years old. He wears it well. He puts up the braggadocio and the big personality, but it does wear at these guys. Make no mistake, they're human beings. That is pressure. We're going to talk about another young, flashy fighter who looks like he's on top of the world, who we're learning is struggling. And by a fight like Berlanga had this past Saturday, that's going to help him. It gives him a little bit of a safety valve to release some of that pressure that was coming at him. I bet in his heart of hearts, he's very relieved to have that first round knockout streak over.
You mentioned, Daniel, I want to bring both of you into the conversation in terms of my next question. You mentioned, Daniel, that Berlanga showed that he's not near ready for top 10, top 15 kind of guy. Before this fight against Nicholson, the word was that should Berlanga win, they're talking about a possible match against former 68 world title contender Jesse Hart, right? Given what you saw last weekend, is Berlanga ready for that kind of test?
No, not right now. No, I would say put him back, give him another good, decent opponent, let him go to that point when it comes to Jesse Hart. Because Jesse Hart is a lot tougher than Nicholson, and he hits harder than Nicholson. And like I mentioned, Berlanga, for everything going into it, he looked gassed. You saw the bounce that was pretty bloody at the end of the fight. You cannot risk that if you're fighting somebody that is, at the most, like I said, a contender gatekeeper in Hart. Put him into a couple of other decent fights. If your plan is to do that, to put Hart, you lean it towards the end of the year or early 2022, when you know he's worked on what he needs to work on. Because if we throw him at him right now, I can say more with pretty good confidence that Berlanga will lose.
Yeah, I agree. Berlanga needs to go back to actually a very similar opponent. Find me another Nicholson. A group of us talking over the weekend thought another guy that would be great for him and take him some rounds would be somebody like Vaughn Alexander, Devin Alexander's brother, who's very durable, who's very steady, who does punch with power, but he's not a super power puncher, one knockout kind of, one hitter quitter kind of guy, and he's not a closer. So I think he'd be a very similar fighter. And another guy that occurred to me that is always very game and available is super middleweight Dennis Douglin, who got a last minute call. I'm trying to think who he fought. He got pulled into a card at the last minute. That's a guy, he lives in Las Vegas, he's in the gym and he's always ready, and he puts up a good fight. So, you have a lot of guys around the super middleweight division who are these durable journeyman, always in the gym fighters. Berlanga needs as many of those guys as they can feed to him in 8-round fights for a while.
I agree. I don't think he's ready for the Jesse Hart type of fighters yet. He still needs some more seasoning. He still needs more experience. I wouldn't mind another fight or two, or even a 3 against some Nicholson type guy, to Gail's point. Why rush him? They're going to keep featuring him on ESPN. Give him attention, give him spotlights, and he's probably going to make some decent money, given his popularity, particularly among social media and whatnot. So keep the road going where it is. You don't need to make a tremendous leap. The key is, for me, how does he look in this next fight? How does he look against a similar type opponent? If he faces a similar type opponent and he ends up fighting the same way, my eyebrows is going to raise. I'm like, okay, there's no significant improvement. But if I see some more things in terms of skill, in terms of nuance to his game, I'm like, okay, he's getting better, and that's what he needs right now. He needs to get better. He doesn't need necessarily to jump up and fight this guy or wrestle a world title shot. Let's move on to Japan. I don't know if any of you guys saw this fight. Kenshiro Teraji defending the WBC title at 108 pounds, mandatory defense against Hisada over in Osaka. I was not able to watch this fight fully. We tried, Gail, Friday night, but the live link shut down on us. But I can still give a recap here. Teraji basically used his hand and foot speed and skill to overall dominate. He put down Hisada round 4. I want to say with a right counter in the second round, put him down, and he basically jabbed and threw combinations throughout to stay ahead of the game on points. Okay, let's talk future here for Teraji, because I did a write-up for this for 3 Kings Boxing. You can check it out on 3kingsboxing.com. The argument that I made in my article for 3 Kings, Gail, is that it's time, or it's Kenshiro, he's ready to make his next step up. A lot of people want to see him fight Koguchi, who's the WBA and Ring Magazine champ, but Koguchi has talked about engaging in a unification bout against Elwin Soto, who's WBO champion. You got Felix Alvarado out there. You got Hecky Butler out there. If Team Kenshiro decides to take that next step up, who do you think it will be? And even though Koguchi is saying he wants a fight against Soto, do you think the money will be just too much, too enticing, and in the end, we will eventually see an all-Japanese unification showdown between Teraji and Koguchi?
Yeah, I think so, because the action in this division is primarily in Japan. There are noises, unconfirmed still, that Soto has got a date on the Canelo Alvarez undercard against Katsunari Takayama set up. So he's got that fight in play. he's going to need to take care of that business. And maybe, these fights aren't that far apart, a couple weeks. So they're essentially in the same sort of, rhythm on the calendar. I would, whatever fights that happen needs to be with the Japanese audience in mind in this division. The rivalry with Soto probably makes for a more interesting fight than between countrymen, but the all Japanese fights probably will be easier to make. In this day and age, I am almost always in favor of whatever keeps you busier. I hate it when these guys, they want that perfect fight and they wait and they wait and they wait. And I get it. They don't want to screw up a payday by taking another opponent and maybe they get injured or some crazy thing happens or, there's a massive upset. I mean, it does happen. But, when we see, and this is an extreme example, but you see a lot of guys just putting their entire career on hold because they want to win the Canelo sweepstakes, for example. And that is just not good for anybody, most of the boxers and the fans. So I say, keep them busy, get that next opponent, take whoever's willing to get in there with you. There's a sellable fight in front of your fans in Japan. Carry on.
Exactly. That's pretty much the most you can do. Try to keep them active. Make yourself more commodity name. Then, like I said, naturally, especially in these weight divisions, the challengers will start coming to you. And that's going to be the game plan that you're going to put into it, particularly now when you're facing a situation where there's a good chance Japan goes back into lockdown now because they've had a spike in cases recently. So they're already deciding to maybe start limiting crowds again or maybe canceling, like I said, some events. So just keep yourself busy while you can and just hope, like I said, that you build enough so that your next opponents are going to be marquee, particularly in the division that you're dealing with, because you're very close to the golden standard in those lower weight classes. So don't mess it up.
Sorry, I was on mute. Last fight on the docket before we talk about go into the news segment. Let's go to West Point in New York. Go back to you on this one, Daniel. Let's talk about the featherweight division, women's featherweight division. Jelena Mrdjenovich defending her WBC title against Ericka Cruz on last week, the middle of last week, right in West Point. Well, WBA, excuse me, not WBC, WBA title. Anyway, she fought Ericka Cruz, who was underdog, undefeated Mexican lady. Cruz not just won, but she controlled things from jump. The fight was stopped in round 7, I believe, due to a cut. But at the time, Cruz was winning on all 3 scorecards. I didn't see Mrdjenovich coming back in that fight. She was clearly behind. It was nothing that she could do. Cruz went into boxing mode and did a beautiful job of that from opening bell. Level of surprise here, Daniel, on your part, not just Cruz winning, but at the time of the stoppage, she was winning so easily.
I will admit, work unfortunately prevented me from seeing this card. But I can't cut the highlights, but I want to watch that fight in full again. So, Gail Paulino knows more than I do.
And my correction, Gail, Cruz is not undefeated. She's actually 13-1. She has 1 defeat, but still, since Daniel was not able to watch the fight, I'll direct my questions about the fight to you, Gail.
Absolutely a tremendous fight. Mrdjenovich has made more title defenses and has held that belt longer than any other women's professional. And I think she was at the time of the fight, the current record holder among both genders. Cruz was there as a opponent and significant underdog. And she had that fight in her control from the opening bell. She was aggressive. She was unafraid. She was right on top of Mrdjenovich. She bloodied her early. There was a headbutt accidental, which is why it went to the cards. But she had a shutout on all 3 cards at the time of the stoppage. I mean, she just flat out took control and beat Mrdjenovich up, and no one saw that coming. She just wanted it more. Now, Mrdjenovich had a fairly rough fight and another very bloody fight in her previous appearance, which was also on Ring City in December. This is 4 months since then. You think that she'd shaken off whatever rough patch she had in that last fight, but perhaps she needed another. Well, and maybe she considered Cruz the easy touch, but apparently Cruz had other ideas, and she was extremely emotional with her win. It's wonderful to see somebody who's an underdog like that, not really given a lot of a chance, just come and take what they wanted so bad and celebrate. It was a wonderful fight, very entertaining, and they were in a difficult position because the original main event was a heavyweight bout between 2 undefeated Americans, Jermaine Franklin and Stephen Shaw. And unfortunately, Franklin tested positive for COVID the weekend before the fight, which was extremely disappointing. But I'll tell you what, the ladies did themselves proud, carried the card. Once again, we had some terrific fights on the undercard of another surprise win from a kid out of Tijuana. Let me tell you something. If Ring City calls you and you're a young fighter from Tijuana who's an underdog, take that fight because they're all winning. This is a kid who was not very well known, but being trained by Manny Robles, had his act together, and he made the most of his opportunity. Angel Ruiz, so keep an eye on him too.
Amanda Serrano is out here talking how she wants unification, wants to become undisputed at 126, right? Do you think that Cruz could compete with the likes of Serrano? And would it even be wise for her to take that fight right now if she was offered the chance to fight Serrano?
In this case, I'd say yes. It's the old saying in boxing that when you've got that title, you fight 10% more improved from when you didn't have the title. And Cruz looked darn good. Whatever willed her to take control of that fight and perform so well, if it's fresh in her mind, that victory is fresh and gives her the confidence to do more of what she did well in that fight, Serrano is going to be a prohibitive favorite no matter who gets in the ring with her. She's a juggernaut. But if Ruiz is going to have a chance, she was not hurt in the fight. She came out pretty clean. They stopped after, I want to say 7 rounds. I think she goes for it. If I was advising her, I'd say, listen, carry your momentum, carry the feeling of that win and what you did right into that fight to give you the best possible chance. And that's a great bout for Ring City to make. They're starting to get a reputation among knowledgeable boxing fans for highly entertaining, competitive cards. And this would be wonderful momentum for them to once again stage another action-packed, really fun, competitive women's bout.
Let's move on to some news here. And you kind of teased at this earlier, Gail, and let's talk Ryan Garcia, right? He announced on his Instagram over the weekend that he's going to fall out take himself out of a proposed bout against Javier Fortuna. I believe the date was June the 5th. In the post, he mentioned how he has to take care of himself first and foremost and get himself together. Now, in the aftermath, there's been a lot of discussion that the reason behind him dropping out of the fight has to do with issues of mental health. He hasn't said that. Others have instead, and Teofimo Lopez, who's unified, not undisputed, unified champion at 135, basically gave him a shout out and showed support on Twitter. Right, others have as well. Are we for sure that this is an issue of mental health? I'll start the conversation with you, Daniel. And if so, your reaction to what Garcia decided to do.
There hasn't been a lot of details out there, but what looks to be leaning, like you mentioned, Teofimo mentioned it, Tevin Farmer mentioned it. It seems like the consensus among the people that are in the know is that it is mental health. And if that's the case, then I applaud him. I applaud him for taking this step because there's been, unfortunately, too many instances in general, people not taking care of their mental health, just trying to go through the motions, and it damages them later on. And Ryan Garcia, you're in this situation where you're a big social media star right now. People love your clicks. You know you're one of Golden Boys right now, main people that they want to push. And you know, unfortunately, on the other side, you have your camp that vehemently, let's put it bluntly, is not too fond of Oscar on Golden Boy Promotions. So that can factor into getting a lot of stress and not putting you in the right space, particularly in this situation that Ryan Garcia finds himself in. Fighting somebody high Fortuna, knowing full well that you win, you have to make the fight with Haney, and then afterwards, if everything works out well, you can try to make the case for undisputed. You try to challenge Teofimo. And or even go a different route and try to challenge Tank Davis. So there's a lot of factors that have to play into it. And it's like I said, if it's legitimately the case, I have no reason whatsoever to doubt it. And if it's the case, you have to applaud him because he's taking his actual mental health first rather than trying to push himself into a situation that damages him later.
What say you of this, Gail? I'll just say on a personal note, if it is that, fine. I just wish he would just come out and say it instead of leaving up to everybody to speculate. But again, if he is dealing with issues of mental health, by all means, deal with that. Just come out and admit it. That's all.
Well, there's some connecting of the dots that needs to be done here. It wasn't only the immediate Instagram post talking about withdrawing due to his health. Not very many days, I believe, prior, I'm not sure of the exact timing, in a prior post, he went into great detail saying that he struggles with anxiety and depression every day. Some days are better than others. And that just because somebody appears on the top of the world and appears to be doing well and fine and happy and smiling, you don't always know what's going on behind the scenes and what's really going on with them, privately. So he was very explicit about that. And on the heels of that post comes this one. There's some distance between them, but not much. I also see what his peers are saying in the boxing community, and they're being extremely supportive and gracious. For example, one of the first people to comment was Teofimo Lopez, who said, "It takes a brave soul like Ryan Garcia to openly express that he's going through tough times mentally. Instead of pointing the finger at him, maybe you should take a lesson from it. We're all dealing with something, so what makes us any better?" And it's true. don't underestimate what it takes for a young, Mexican American, Latino boxing star or star athlete of any kind who's got millions of social media followers who dissect every little thing he does to admit he needs help and admit he's got a problem. That's a big step for him. And I'm sure when he got started and he was, taking out, opponents, or in the early fights, right and left, knocking them out, low stress fights at 19 and 20, he was still more or less being managed by his dad. He didn't have a care in the world. He was making enough money to have fun, but not enough money to worry about, and then all of a sudden the whole social media universe explodes. Now he's starting to get significant promotional deals. He's been in music videos and he's doing commercials and modeling. Forget the boxing for a minute. When those companies own a piece of your hide, that's enormous pressure. The truth is, that's where he's making the big money right now. And then the social media growth explodes and you got to manage all of that. He's got somebody working for him full time to do that stuff. And he admits that he has people having to help him. So suddenly you have employees you got to worry about. We've all dealt with supervising people or having employees. It's not easy. That's a lot. He's 22 years old. How many 22-year-olds do you know mature enough to manage all of that and have to train as an athlete at the highest levels of a very dangerous sport? You know what? That is a lot. That would crush a lot of people. So if his peers are seeing through this and supporting him, that says a lot to me. What I think is absolutely reprehensible is for trolling fans out there to turn on him, talk shit about him, accuse him of ducking. Now, maybe he is, but innocent till proven guilty, in my opinion. Javier Fortuna has been fairly gracious. And if anybody has a right to be upset and be pissed off, it's poor Javier Fortuna, who's had now 4 massive fight opportunities go nowhere. Give that man a decent fight and pay him some money. I mean, that poor guy, he's the fallout. So, let's wish Ryan well. Let's take it at face value. Let's hope that whatever he needs to do to get himself right is done. He is even on and off, and and Ryan Garcia talks a lot, let's face it. The words retirement have come out of his mouth, right? That he's only going to fight a few more years. Why is he saying something like that? Well, maybe now we know. That might have been a little early release valve for some of the pressure he was feeling to set this kind of sunset clause for himself and say, in 3 years, I'm going to be done. I'm going to be done fighting when I'm 25 or 27, whatever it was he said. That's quite a statement for a young guy on the rise to make. But he might have done that, again, to try to preserve what looks like is a very fragile mental state. So good luck to him. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope Gold Boy can, resurrect this card, get things together. They lost the Jaime Munguia card, got delayed. This card got delayed. I think they should take out the biggest possible insurance policy on Virgil Ortiz Jr. right now. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, in the end, you want folks, fighters, to be healthy, not just in a physical sense, but in a mental and spiritual sense as well. Don't know what's going on with Ryan Garcia. I'm not going to do much speculation here. I just hope that whatever is bothering him, whatever is causing him ill and discomfort, he seeks help and he gets it fixed. It's not even about fighting for me at this point. Getting in his life in order outside of the ring, and if this word about him or speculations about him are true, let's get that uh, um, dealt with first and foremost before we see him back in action. Let's move on, Daniel, to some more news. Eddie Hearn once again teasing the folks about giving the fans and whatnot an update about negotiations for Joshua Fury. He says, in his words, paraphrasing there in stage 4, a report broke during the um, Navarrete fight with Diaz that money with financial disclosure about the fight being in Saudi Arabia, 150 million purse, both would split it 100 in excess of 150 million, with both fighters, Fury and Joshua, to make $75 million. Tremendous amount. Outside of Pacquiao, Floyd doesn't get any bigger than that. Your reaction to the latest news regarding a possible fight between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury?
I promised myself I was not going to yell. I did promise myself that I was not going to yell because right as going into this, so we're looking into it. Less than 45 minutes ago, Bob decided to pop out. And he's sounding pretty contradictory to what Eddie Hearn is saying. He's saying that Eddie has been radio silent. So he doesn't know what's happening, which they should just be flat out that this one point. This just be flat out honest. The fight is nowhere near being done. And all that is happening is you're just trying to put placeholders in either to keep Fury in the gym and not go full Pookie, or just trying to make sure that whatever bidding partners that you're bidding with stay active. Because right now, all that we have is, oh, wow, we have a money, we have a split. That we don't know where the money's coming from. But now you're mentioning just now Saudi Arabia, but it doesn't matter. There's no date, no venue. All this is right now is years. And in fact, I'm gonna click on this boxing scene article. That should tell you where it is. According to them, by Dan Rayfield, actually, who we know has been very credible when it comes to Top Rank. Frustrated, Top Rank chairman Bob Arum told Boxing Scene on Monday that he would not be surprised if plans for the all-British undisputed heavyweight championship between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua fall apart in the Fury next winds up facing Deontay Wilder. At this point, I wouldn't mind. At this point, Fury just needs to fight somebody for his own health. He needs to fight somebody. It doesn't matter if it's Wilder. It doesn't matter if it's Joshua, or it doesn't even matter if it could be Usyk. But he needs to fight somebody because, unfortunately, he's even admitted to this. We've talked about mental health. Tyson Fury has been very open about his struggles in mental health. He mentally needs to be in the gym. He mentally needs to think about a fight. And with him particularly, idle hands at the devil's playground. So if you do not finalize something, or at least now just admit the fact that, you might have tried to legally screw Wilder over. Just do something, because at the end of the day, Fury needs this unfortunately more than Joshua does. Joshua can wait. He can just fight mandatories throughout, but Fury's the one that needs us more. They need to do something on it. And as far as I'm concerned, nothing has been done.
Tell us how you really feel, Daniel. Tell us how you really feel. I don't know what to make of this. I'm just going to leave it as it is in terms of Hearn and Aram and seemingly the contradictions and the conflicting stories about the progress of the negotiations, and have my fingers crossed that hopefully we will see this proposed two fight deal between the two and just keep it at that and move on. Let's go to some other news. Um, a lot of talk about a proposed fight between um, Terence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao this summer. Those negotiations have now turned cold, uh, from what I've read, and we reported this on Three Kings Boxing. Uh, Bud never signed the contract. Um, Money wasn't being put up in the Middle East for that fight. Now I'm hearing, Gail, that there's been discussions about Pacquiao fighting Errol Spence. What do you make of all of this? And now that the quote unquote negotiations between Crawford and Pac-Man are now no more, where does Bud go from here? Because he needs a big fight at 147.
Bud needs any fight at 147. I mean, at this point,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
to get in the ring, same problem we just talked about with Gary Russell Jr. He's incredibly talented, but people forget about him because he stays out of the ring so long. So he just does not build up any fan momentum and any excitement about his fights. And Bud's getting to that point. Bud doesn't seem particularly motivated. He's made his mark. If he was to retire now, he unified at 140. Nobody doubts his skill level. Everybody's got a different level of ambition. And some people think, I've made my mark. I've made my money. I have a family. I have a long life ahead of me. Andre Ward did that. Bud Crawford might be going along that same path. Now, as to the whole thing with Pacquiao, as you've noted many times on the show, Michael, I'm a formally trained journalist and editor, and I teach journalism at the college level. Standard, traditional, sourced journalism. And under that banner of traditional journalism, which, contrary to everybody's thinking, does have rules and does have ethics and standards that everybody is taught, you don't report rumors until they become facts. It's your job as a professional journalist to check out those rumors and ground them until they become facts, and then you're allowed to report on them. That's how a traditional journalist is trained. In today's media environment, where there are very few full-time, making their living, paying their mortgage, buying their groceries kind of people, paid full-time to be traditional, unbiased journalists reporting on boxing. I mean, you could count them on two hands, and maybe you need a toe or two in the whole country. That's it. Many of them are in the employment of promoters. They are running YouTube channels where it's imperative for them to make a living by churning out content, regardless of whether it turns out to be true or not. And they're very willing to report rumors, and they're very willing to speculate. Let's not confuse that with the traditional reporting that you do not report anything until you can point to proof. Some kind of source, some kind of written document, some kind of official announcement. We haven't had any of that shit about Pacquiao and Crawford. Maybe they were talking. Maybe third parties have mentioned it. I don't think it went a whole lot farther than that ever. So the fight is off. Whoever said the fight was on? It's non-news to me. It's only news because of the names involved. The bigger issue is, what the hell are we going to do about Bud Crawford and his situation? I don't think we're ever going to see a Spence and Crawford fight. I really don't. And I'm getting to the point where it's edging into Mayweather Pacquiao, I don't really care anymore territory is the problem, especially for the money. And I'll give the pandemic a little bit of the blame, but not a whole lot. If this is their guys' decision, if this is the decision of these guys in their camps to walk away, it is what it is. As far as the Joshua and Fury situation goes, that has been made a big darn mess by the pandemic, by the issues with Wilder. There are the discussions that Wilder was going to go after Fury and his team in court over some contractual transgressions. Maybe there is more weight to that, more truth to that than we know. And the people negotiating the contracts between Joshua and Fury are worried about getting into some financial entanglements and obligations being derailed by some other sort of legal issue over here on the other side. Who the hell knows? What a mess. I think Daniel's right. If I was betting money, and I work hard for my money, so I don't bet it too often, but if I was betting money, I think I might be inclined to take a bet saying that fight is not going to happen in calendar year 2021.
Shoot, I sent some real cynicisms from all parties involved, be it from both of you, be it Joshua, Fury, be it Pacquiao, Crawford. It's understandable. I would say more so from the Pacquiao Crawford angle, because fans are desperately wanting Bud to get in the ring with a big name, most notably Errol Spence, and it has soured a lot of folks, myself included. Crawford's comments regarding a fight with Spence, saying he's not interested. Whatever you think about the money demands that Spence is offering on the table, 60-40, I say, Bud, damn it, do it. If you think you're that good, fight him for 60-40 and then get more money in a rematch. You need something at this point, because Amir Khan, Kell Brook, Koliaskis, that's not going to do it anymore. You're in your 30s now. You haven't done anything at 147. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. The clock is counting down on you right now. You need something. Joshua Fury, who knows? I want this again. Like I said, I want to see that fight happen. I hope it does. And if we don't get Pacquiao, Crawford, if we don't get Crawford, Spence, say what you want about Manny at this point of his career. I wouldn't mind seeing a Pacquiao Spence fight. In terms of Crawford, again, something. Hell, fight Sean Porter. Dude has been calling you out. He's your number one contender, bruh. Get in the ring with him. It's a good fight. It's the name that folks are looking for, or one of the names that folks are looking for. Keith Thurman called you out earlier this year. Say what you want about the $10 million offer. I had my questions about it, but in hindsight now, Thurman was right to do it. Take that fight as well. Do something, bud. Damn it, do something. One last bit of news here that broke last evening. I was actually on a staff meeting call with Three Kings Boxing while I was at the job, and news broke regarding Kazuta Ioka, Gail, and that is that, in short, Ioka is that Ioka failed a drug test, suspected of a doping violation was found in his sample around the time of his fight against Kazuta Ioka at the end of last year. Ioka was in previous trouble with the Japanese Boxing Commission because of issues of tattoos and stuff. He was facing a possible suspension. They're really strict when it comes to marijuana violations in the country of Japan to begin with. Will Ioka get suspended? Will the JBC lay down the hammer on him? I don't know, Gail, but there's some worry. There's some cause for concern for one Mr. Ioka.
Yeah, there's concern. Does it have legs? I guess we're going to find out. But, these sort of issues, whether they prove true or not, tend to put, where there's smoke, there's fire in the minds of fans and others who are dealing with them. So, it is troublesome no matter what turns out to be the case.
What say you, Daniel? And I'm going to give a quick update while you give your comments. There was a meeting apparently today. No, apparently to it. There's an official investigation that's going on right now with the Japanese boxing commission regarding one Ioka and this is suspected positive drug test.
Well, let's face facts when it comes to Costa. He's been poking the bear with the Japanese commission for some time now. Whether it's with the weed smoking, whether it's with the tattoos. And yes, this gets him in trouble in Japan. It could wind up, like I said, just leave out any New Year's Eve fights out of the question in Japan. That doesn't stop him from going anywhere else. Most of the things that he's done, because first, the doping thing has to be proven. We do always have to remember, innocent until proven guilty in that front. We have to see official tests in that area. But when it comes to everything else, not a lot of countries, particularly the U.S., where he's fought more recently, there's not that much of an issue when it comes to it, including when it comes to marijuana. I live in a state where the governor within the last month just legalized weed. So it probably opens, as the door may close to him in Japan, in his home country, and maybe time then Castro just moves operations overseas, maybe permanently then in the U.S., which may benefit him in the end, considering a lot of the fighters that he wants to fight are fighting out here in the U.S.
So we'll definitely keep an eye on that situation. This is a really developing and evolving story regarding WBO 115 pounds champion Kazuta Ioka. Let's go into some previews of some fights here. Let's start. How do I want to go this? Let's start in California. Battle of Mexican heavyweights, Gail. You kind of was boxing Nostradamus here. You predicted this fight would happen early on, early. And that is a former unified heavyweight champion, Mandy Ruiz, fighting Chris Errola. They're going to fight at the place formerly known, or as I still like to call, StubHub. I don't know if it's going to be full attendance or the amount of the attendance, but a lot of talk in the preview about Ruiz and the fact that he's lost about a lot of weight. He weighed 283 in his rematch with Joshua December 2019. Word is now that he's down in the mid 250s. Errola, he looks to be in decent shape as well. Should be fun in StubHub, Gail.
Oh, hell yeah. This is going to be a damn good time. It's the war grounds there in Carson, and these guys, we're just destined to have a fight there at some point. The normal capacity for, we all still call it StubHub in Southern California. That's the name that's stuck. The full capacity without bleachers added is about 8,500. They could goose that sucker up to about 10,000 officially. The record attendance for boxing was the Golovkin fight with Marco Antonio Rubio, and they did get to 10,000 plus for that fight. So in California, they're allowed to have 25% of capacity, so they're calling it 2,500. Now, I'll tell you what, in the confines of the little outdoor bowl, depending on how they seat everybody, 2,500 fans can really whoop it up. By comparison, there were about 5,000 fans in the seats in Kissimmee, Florida, and they sounded like a full arena. So I think that place will be rocking. The whole card is filled with locals and Mexican fighters in the same way the card this weekend by Top Rank was filled with a lot of Puerto Rican fighters. But here you go. 2 Mexican-American heavyweights duking it out. Both with similar stories of, at times not having been too disciplined, squandering opportunities, and they both had a wake-up call. In Ariola's case, fairly late in his career. In Ruiz's case, he hopes not. They both appear, at least from what we see on social and from their recent media workouts last week, where we really got a good look at both of them. They both appear to be in absolutely the best shape of their professional career to date. Ruiz says he's at 255 right now, and he'd like to eventually take about 20 more pounds off. But he said, I didn't want this to be just a weight.
Not in that little bit of time.
Yeah, well, not this time, but he said, I don't want this to be a weight training camp, that he's happy where he is right now. Arreola, I'll tell you what, I don't think I've ever seen him that slim down. I wouldn't be surprised if he's at 220, 225, maybe 230. I mean, maybe my eyes are deceiving me. But damn, he looks phenomenal. And one thing about Arreola, say what you will. I mean, he's lost, most of his major opportunities. I mean, for Pete's sake, he's lost twice to Bermain Stavern. But on the other hand, he just set a punch output record for heavyweights at age 40. He's always worked very hard. He'll put up a fight to the bitter end. He does have fairly good speed and mobility, even when he was heavy. So I'm very curious to see what he looks like. Obviously, Ruiz is by far the favorite, but for as long as it lasts, I think we're going to get just plain crazy boxing entertainment, a mano-a-mano, fight in a phone booth with 2 really big dudes with a whipped-up crowd. Come on, everybody. What's not to love? Except for the fact that it has a $49.95 price tag. That is very disappointing. So, decide if this is worth it to you with the undercard. We have several good fights on the undercard. We have a lot of people who are becoming big fans of Sebastian Fonora, aka the Towering Inferno. Thank God it's not $75, or everybody would say, "Oh, hell no." For 50, there is definitely going to be a certain constituency that's all over this. Those of us in Southern California who've known these guys for a long time, the fights that would pack, say, the arena in Ontario with 10,000 fans to see these guys, who would pack StubHub if they could sell it out. Those folks are going to buy the pay-per-view. Everybody else, you might be watching it on YouTube on Sunday. I get it. But it will be a hell of a good time. So, buy yourself a case of Mexican beer and what the heck. Give it a look.
I'm predicting that Arreola could win. He could possibly win looking very good because of the fact that he has great eyes, particularly mid-range in. He does a very good job of being able to punch with his opponent up close. He has very, very fast hands, and Arreola, he tends to come in open. He's open when he's attacked. When he's on attack, and that leaves him to get hit a lot, Daniel. And he also has a habit of lumping up. Tough as all get out, but he can be consistently beaten to the punch. But that's my opinion. What's your thought on this fight, Daniel?
Well, when I saw the fight being made, I didn't really laugh at it the way a lot of people did laugh at it. Because I know we live in a world where your last impression is the one people remember. And the last thing that I remember when it comes to Ruiz is his rematch with Joshua. But to me, this is Chris Ariola's last chance. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen him in 2007 when he came here. He was on one of the cards here, ESPN Friday Night Fights. You saw the potential there. You saw the crowd. You saw the love that he was getting. However, unfortunately, whether due to happenstance, injuries, like we had to remember when he fought, I think it was Vitali. I think it was Vitali or Vladimir, where he broke his hand during the fight and he refused to quit. And when that happenstance, just losing out against somebody like Marines to Burn, it just hasn't worked out for him, unfortunately. And Ruiz has taken the mantle that he wanted to take, as far as like being the Mexican heavyweight champion. Now, for Errola, yeah, this is his last chance, which makes it the most to lose when it comes to Ruiz, because he showed out pretty well in that first fight against Joshua, and then proceeded to do everything possible that you're not supposed to do in a refight. He did the stereotypical, I won by surprise now, and now I'm going to screw the opportunity when it came to the rematch. He needs to show in this fight that the fighter that they saw in the rematch is not him. That the person that they saw was the guy that caught Joshua and stopped him. That's his opportunity going into it, because obviously, like I said, he could position himself later on if he wins, try to challenge Dillian White, maybe try to get a little bit into the Usyk sweepstakes, because he hasn't dropped down to the point where you have to put him up against like prospects like Yoka or Dubois in order for him to get a shot. Like, he's earned his chance, like to at the lowest you can say is fight is Dillian White. But that's if he wins. He needs to win this fight, because on the other side is a man who knows this is his last opportunity to be credible in the division. And if he's not, then there's unfortunately not much left for Ariola to do. He can retire with his head held high. He was a good fighter for his time. But Ruiz has to be very, very careful of that. But me personally, I think he'll pull it off. He just has probably too much of a quick hands when it comes to fighting somebody like Ariola.
And I think even though I believe that Ruiz will win, I think the fight will be fun as long as it lasts. And that's all I'm looking for. Ultimately, is this to be a good fight and an entertaining scrap. Don't care that much who will win, despite my prediction. I just want to see a good, entertaining fight in front of folks. I hope the StubHub crowd is in it. However many people will show up. And honestly, I hope it'll do some decent numbers as well. I think this is a fight that's all good. It's all good for the sport, regardless of who wins. If Ruiz will win, yeah, that could move him into some big possibilities, of course, put him closer and closer to the title shot. But again, good fight. That's what I want. Just a good, entertaining scrap. I want to be entertained. That's my MO heading into this fight that's happening this weekend. Because there's so many fights that's happening. I'm going to split these fights up. Going back to you, Daniel, started with the return of Erislandy. Lara, he has a version of the WBA title at 154 pounds. He's fighting a guy by the name of Lamanna. Your thoughts? Are you there, Daniel?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Cornflake, of course. They had to get Cornflake for this fight, but I expect Lara to win this out. Like, yeah, he's up there in age, but he has the way he fights and the way his style is. He probably has maintained a lot more of his speed, a lot more of his instincts when it comes to defense. So I fully expect Lara to come out, win, and do something to consolidate this because Andrade is still there. Like I said, you can fight Andrade, and it looks like Eddie Hearn's just trying to try to throw Andrade to the WBC. No, sorry, to the PBC in some way or another because the fight. You could do that, or you could actually try to get the fight in Japan with Murata. Try to go for the actual belt. But I expect him to win. I expect him to win fairly easily.
Going to you, Gail, to talk about this next fight here. Let's head over to the UK. Pretty significant card over on the Zone is going to take place over the weekend. Headlined by Dereck Chisora fighting Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker didn't look very good against Junior Fa. So switch trainers fighting a Chisora who's always tough. I can't get a read on this. If it's a battle of skills, Parker should win. If it's a matter of will, Chisora could have the edge because he is a tough guy despite his antics outside the ring. Your thoughts on this? Who do you have winning?
Tell you what, it's the heavyweight division. One punch to change the fight. For Chisora mainly because he's got some knockout power. Parker is more of a work rate technician, pressure kind of guy. So it's one of those fights where whoever can impose his version of the game plan wins. What's fueling the fight, which makes it a little more interesting, is it's definitely a career crossroads fight. It's not that either guy, retires if he loses. However, the loser will definitely fall out. If they were anywhere close to top 10 consideration, they're out. And you can even argue they're out of the top 15. They might be down pretty close to teetering out of the top 20. I mean, it really takes them out of any definition of the top tier of the heavyweight division, which, is fairly healthy right now. You have the top, kind of the top 3, 4, 5 names. Then you've got some of the young, ambitious fighters coming up. Despite his loss, guys like Dubois, Joe Joyce, who's making a splash, Hrgovic, Alan Bebic, even, Yoka, all these guys. So you've got to have a win to stay relevant. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So that could either be motivating or it can be pressure. And they've got to stand up to that too. It's home turf for Chisora. It's a long trip for Parker over there. And I am concerned about what we saw from Parker in his last fight. He just didn't look that great. He's changed trainers. That first fight with a new trainer can be kind of squirrely. If you're a betting person, I don't know what the odds are. You might want to put a few bucks on Dereck Chisora. I'm just saying.
Yeah, given how Parker looked, given some outside of the ring issues involving a drug case, which his name was implicated in his native New Zealand, you just don't know where his mental is at, and that could be danger for him fighting a Chisora who's trying to keep his name relevant. To your point, Gail, this is a crossroads kind of a fight for both men. They should be hungry. Does Parker have the hunger at this point? Because in past performances, he seems to not show that kind of vigor on a consistent basis. Against Joshua, he showed it in spurts. In his loss to Dillian White, he showed it in spurts. Didn't show it at all against Junior Fa. And we'll see what does he have, that that grit. Because he's going to need it if Chisora is on his game. and we'll see how it goes. Let's go to the undercard of that main event between Chisora and Parker Daniel. The return of Dmitry Bivol, right? Has a WBA title at 175, WBA super title. Um, Canelo gets a lot of the attention, uh, squeezes a lot of the air out the room when it comes to discussion at 168 and 175. Uh, a lot of people feel that their Bertsev is his greatest comp. For me, it's Bivol because of his skill, uh, uh, his boxing ability, and in the fact that he can move right. He returns to the ring first fight against 2019, fighting a guy by the name of um, give me a quick second here, fighting Craig Richards. Um, does Richards stand any chance here if Bivol is on his game?
No, flat out no. And this, I think somebody pointed it out that at this point, I could think almost a year and a half ago, Bivol was headlining HBO cards. And it says he's gone from that to being on the undercard of technically a Dereck Chisora main event. That speaks to like the management. That speaks to how hard it's been him to find good opponents to keep him active. And unfortunately, it can hurt him a little bit because of his style also hurts him in a bit because even though he's an excellent fighter, he has great hand speed, good footwork, great defensive skills. He has the tendency where if he can knock you out within the first 3 rounds, he's gonna take the foot off the gas a little bit and just try to outbox you for the rest of the fight. I saw it. I remember seeing it in person when it happened when he fought Chilemba in the Kovalev in the undercard of the Kovalev fight. Like, he coasted through that fight as soon as he realized, okay, I'm not going to be able to knock him out. It almost cost him against Joe Smith. I think a lot of people would say if that fight would have been probably 30 seconds longer, Joe Smith might have stopped the ball. So this is a situation where he has to get his name out there. He has to show that as far as skill, he's the most credible opponent to Canelo when it comes to that fight. Because at this point, especially with the layoff that's been happening, you probably can say that it could be more of a fairly even matchup. Because while Bivol is going to be the more skilled, Canelo, if he feels he can hurt him, he won't take his foot off the gas pedal. He will try to go for the knockout if he can. And that's what Bivol has to position himself to because we all know it's a sweepstakes. Berteviev's ahead. You have to get your horse running so you can pull ahead.
Last fight to be discussed on this card is going to happen in Manchester, airing live on the Zone, and that is the undisputed women's lightweight champ, Katie Taylor, fighting Natasha Jonas, who gave Terry Harper a very, very tough fight last year. I felt Jonas down at 130 pounds. I felt that Jonas should have got the victory that night when she fought. Let me rewind. I felt that Jonas deserved the verdict over Harper when they fought. She's moving up to 135. This is kind of a rematch of a rivalry that took place between the two ladies when they were in the amateurs. Katie Taylor has gotten significantly better as pro. A lot of people believe she's the number one women's fighter in the world, not Clarissa Shields. Taylor always seems to have the slight edge over Jonas as amateur. Will we see the same situation here when they finally fight as pros, Gail?
I'm not sure. Taylor, both of them, give them both credit for growth as professionals. They've had to learn to fight as very different fighters. And for as good as Katie Taylor is, she has had to make that transition from amateur to professional. And it took her several fights to do it. She's now really starting to hit top speed with that, though she has made the successful transition. She stayed an amateur for a long time, and frequently it's really difficult for amateurs, especially those who are really successful like she's been, to change their game at that point. That's a lot of habits to unlearn. The other thing about Katie Taylor that I'm not sure everybody realizes is, she has not been well known as a professional, for a long, long time. And people assume, especially also looking at her, she's younger than she is. So she's 34, closing in on 35. So for a 17-0 fighter, compare her to Edgar Berlanga, who's 17-0, who's 11 years younger than she is. It sort of gives you an equivalent picture. What I find interesting about Jonas is she is actually older. She has fewer pro fights. She had fewer amateur fights. I think she's made the transition more quickly in some ways. And that fight against Terry Harper, that was one of the best fights of her career. I'm going to go back to what I said about Ericka Cruz, who was the underdog in her fight with Mrdjenovich for the women's WBA World Super Featherweight title on the Ring City card, who was quite the underdog. Now, I'm not saying that Katie Taylor and Mrdjenovich are exactly on the same level, or that Jonas and Cruz are, but it's exactly what I advise Cruz to do, which is coming off a very, very good performance, to get right in there and take that ambitious challenge coming off a great performance. And that's what Jonas is doing. I think she'll come very, very close to threatening Katie Taylor. I really do. This is going to be an interesting fight to watch. She's motivated. She does have the tools. She shows knockout power for a woman. Of her 9 wins, 7 of those wins are by knockout. That's a tremendously high knockout percentage for a woman. In contrast, Katie Taylor, out of 17 fights, has only had 6 knockouts, and she has not scored a knockout in several fights. So I think we're in for a much closer contest. Taylor will get home cooking if it's a decision. So Jonas has really got to take it to her, but I do think she has a chance of an upset.
I'm a little bit taken aback that you feel that that you give Jonas such a that you think that she's alive, not just she can be competent, that she's a live underdog here. A lot of people, I guess bookies, quote unquote experts, feel that Taylor's going to win this fight and win this fight rather comfortably. But you think that Jonas, if I'm reading what you're saying correctly, I think you believe that Jonas has a legit chance to pull off the upset.
I do. I'm not sure how I'm not recommending anyone bet their mortgage payment. And I'm not necessarily recommending, maybe an outright win, but you want to play some of the slicing and dicing bets about, distance or scoring a knockdown or, winning certain rounds, making it close. This is one of those fights where it might not be a bad idea to place a bet for a draw. I do seriously think she's got a damn good opportunity. Katie Taylor is not invincible. Look what Delphine Persoon was able to do to her. I'm just saying.
Last fight we'll talk about. All the previous fights we've previewed, all the previous matchups we previewed is going to happen on May 1st. I'm going back to talk about the last fight we're talking about is happening on the day before, April 30th, and that's Moruti Mthalane. Uh, I call him the Zuma Nelson of our time. I wrote it. I did a personal piece with him on Three Kings Boxing, basically focusing around what, how has he been able to preserve himself and still keep his high level performance at this stage of his career. He's 38. Daniel, he's going to defend the fight, defend his IBF 112-pound belt in London against Sonny Edwards on ESPN Plus. Muthalani is the favorite. All things being fair, he should win. However, I do have some worry because the fight is going to be on Edwards' home in Edwards' home country, and Edwards is a guy who likes to move, right? In the lead up, Muthalani said that he's going to do a lot of running. Edwards says, "You know what? You're probably right. I am going to do a lot of running. I think I have to box to win this fight." My fear is, Daniel, is that Edwards is going to stink out the joint and try to steal the fight or try to steal rounds and bank on the fact that and bank on home cooking and maybe some favoritism towards the judges to eke out a bit of a controversial win. Uh, am I wrong? Am I wrong to be worried?
No, we are dealing with the UK here, unfortunately. And one of the main things that I know we talk about when it comes to the UK is there's always that danger of home cooking. And that has shown up in fights egregiously in the past. Obviously, the main one that comes into the top of my head, because I know we're going to talk about it next week, is Billy Joe Saunders when he fought Akabov, when he clearly lost that fight, and yet the judges gave it to him in flying colors. That's the worry you always got to have, unfortunately, in a UK fight. When, especially when you're in a division where you feel like maybe they're mad about the fact that Chocolatito took that title from Yafai and took it pretty easily. And maybe they want some revenge, and we're like, we'll put our other kid, Edwards, in this fight and try to get revenge for Chocolatito. I'm not saying it'll happen, but the fact of the matter is we've seen a good amount of questionable decisions in the UK when it has involved UK fighters. So there is cause for concern. However, I think Mthalane is going to beat the crap out of this kid.
And I think we're going to close things down on that note.
We're not going to talk about the Collin one?
We can talk about it right quick. Go ahead. Michael Collins was fighting a guy by the name of Baluta at 122. I think this may, well, no, it can't be lead up to it because Stephen Fulton is going to be fighting. Well, it may lead up to a fight with Fulton. I'm not sure. But yeah, Michael Collins fighting on the undercard. A quick word on it, Daniel.
Yeah, that's the main. This is actually the main event of this card, actually. And yeah, this is according to this. Yeah, if he wins this fight, Aaron's going to try to make the Stephen Fulton fight next. It's an interesting thing. It's just another one of the good things that Top Rank does when it comes to Olympians. They position themselves to get in the right trajectory for title fights pretty early in their career. And this is a good chance to see, like I said, see Collin get himself active. And if he looks good, I wouldn't mind seeing him against Fulton. Fulton was very impressive in this last fight, and this would just make you salivate more.
Yeah, indeed. And when Showtime released their schedule, summer fall schedule, Fulton is in line to engage in a unification bout against the WBC champion Luis Neris, defending his belt this summer. I want to say in June. I can't remember the name. His opponent escapes me. But if Nery were to win that fight, all roads lead to a fight against Fulton in September. Of course, Conlon, he's number one contender, I believe, one or two contender by the BO. He's going to try to position himself to get his own shot against Fulton, and we'll see how it goes. His upcoming fight against Baluta. And now I think we're going to end the show. Going to start to shut down the show on that note. Going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. But before we get into that, let me say if you like what you heard this evening, be it live or during a future listening on YouTube, please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to subscribe. For those who would check us out on any RSS feed distributed platform, be it iTunes, be it Spotify, be it any and all podcast platforms available. We're just about everywhere now. Google Podcast, any and everywhere in between. Please make sure to follow us there. Please make sure to follow us on Anchor as well. Let me mention Anchor as well. Please make sure to follow us on Anchor, follow us on Spotify, follow us on iTunes. We'd love to hear from you. Comments on iTunes, 5-star comments will get read on the show. Go around the panel. Begin the show with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News in the Falcon Valley Group. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media at the collegiate level. And for those who are interested in the Falcon Valley Group, give a quick plug about the Falcon Valley Group and what it does.
Well, we are a full-service public relations firm based in San Diego. That is the skills that pay the bills. But we love to talk boxing. We love to trash it up on Twitter. Come at me, boxing Twitter. Go ahead. I'm going to be out there cheering for the big boys this Saturday night. I know you'll be watching with me. Come on. And you can read my preview column for that fight and everything else going on this week and beyond at Communities Digital News, which is COM, COMM, Digi, DIGI News, comdiginews.com.
And you also appear on TMZ Live on a bi-weekly basis. When the next time you're going to be on there?
I do indeed. And Harvey and I got into it over Sharon Osbourne last week. So there.
And I'll go to you, Daniel, from the Inscriber and For Boxing News, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat. They're right in the middle of the playoff hunt, playoff race, positioning as the regular season is winding down. Or for those who want to check you out on Twitter, pushing back and clapping back against nonsense, let the folks know where they can find you.
Sorry, folks. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Rockers99, RAWKUZ99. Sorry about that. Wednesday we're gonna have everything ready to go with Joe and Francis for Boxing News. We're gonna get the schedule running up in May, and it's gonna be probably every Wednesday night, be out every Thursday, and we're definitely gonna get ready for this one because next week we know what's coming next week.
Indeed. And shout out to Francis and shout out to Joe, your co-host over on For Boxing News. You know what it is on Twitter with me if you want to talk boxing, if you want to talk music, if you want to talk fitness. Brother JR at Brother JR76 on Twitter. As I said to open the show, if you want to find all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the website is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.com, and repeat that, P4pboxingreport.com. If you want to shoot us an email, you can do so, P4pboxing at P4pboxingreport.com. Just check all over the website. You will find links to check us out all over social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Tumblr, on Twitter, and also hit us up on Instagram. And as I said before, Cash Me and PayPal donation links. Let donation be the best nation. And check out my online coaching page on the website. Should be towards the bottom of the website. If you're interested in getting your fitness game up, taking your fitness game up to the next level, please hit that online coaching link to check me out on Beachbody On Demand. And as I said, take advantage of that 2-week free trial. For 2 weeks, free workouts, free access to Beachbody On Demands, and all of the programs on there, which suits any kind of fitness interests and goals that you may have. On the next episode It's going to be a lengthy show. A lot of recaps. We will do a recap of Mthalane and Sonny Edwards, and also discuss Michael Conlan, his bout, that card in London. We're also going to do a recap of the Areola card, Andy Ruiz Areola card at StubHub and Carson. Also recap Erislandy Lara and his bout. We may talk Sebastian Fedora, who Gail mentioned, super tall junior middleweight contender now. He's a contender now. Um, Also do a recap of Chisora, Joseph Parker, Bivol, Craig Richards, the Katie Taylor bout. We may talk Chris Eubank Jr., who's making his return to the ring. He's going to fight on that card as well. And we'll do a preview of the big fight. The big fight is finally happening May 8th in Arlington. Canelo Alvarez defending his WBA, WBC 168-pound titles against WBO super middleweight champion Billy Joe Saunders. Unification bout there on the undercard. Elvin Soto, who we mentioned in our discussion about Kenshiro Teraji. Soto's going to defend his WBO 108-pound belt against Takayama, former 3-time IBF champion at 105 pounds. Don't be surprised. I'm just going to say it right now. Do not be surprised. No, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it during our preview, in terms of our discussion about that fight. So we'll talk about those two fights in specifically. We may talk Kieran Conway, who's going to fight on that card as well. Decent junior middleweight prospect. So we'll talk about all of those fights. So yeah, episode 323 is in the books for Gail from Communities Digital News and the Falcon Valley Group, Daniel of the Inscriber, and for Boxing News. For Boxing News, I'm your host, Michael. We'll see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night. And last but certainly not least, rest in power. A lot of unfortunate passings in the hip hop community. DMX, Black Rob over the weekend. Really shocking news of Shock G, aka Humpty Hump, one of the co-founders of Digital Underground, the man who helped introduce Tupac to the scene. Passed away, unfortunately, in Florida at age 57. So, yeah, another devastating loss in the hip hop community. We're losing two male legends in the culture. So, rest in power, rest in ultimate power. Shock G.